Maybe you've heard about Lectio Divina, but you want to know what it is before you practice it. And here I'll tell you what it is, where it came from, and also a step-by-step guide on how to practice it. Now, I know when it comes to our spiritual practices, I know it's important for many of you to know what's involved before you jump in and start, in case it's not something you would want to do. I hope I can give you an idea of what this practice is all about. It's one of my favorite spiritual practices. Now, Lectio Divina is a practice of reading the Bible that isn't focused on studying or memorization, but it's focused on reading the scriptures, experiencing God's presence and voice in the scriptures, and how the text might affect or inform how we live our life. Now, the name Lectio Divina is Latin for divine reading, and it's a practice that's used to pray and contemplatively read through the Bible. Now, you can practice this with a group or on your own. And I'll describe the steps in more detail, but first I'll touch on the history of this practice. Now, I only heard about this practice after I was well into adulthood, maybe 10 years ago. And suddenly I was hearing about it everywhere. So it seemed like a very new practice to me. And really, it's an ancient practice that dates back centuries. I just wasn't in a tradition that focused on these kinds of spiritual practices. But I'm glad I found it, and that's why I'm talking about it here, because it can transform the way you connect with God through the scriptures. Now, I'll just highlight a little bit about the history. This form of meditating on the scriptures goes back to the early desert mothers and fathers. Prayerfully meditating on the scriptures was practiced by St. Gregory of Nicaea around 330 to 395. Now, when St. Benedict of Nursia started the Benedictine order of monks, this would have been around 480 to 597, he included the Lectio Divina as part of the order's practices. Now, Leo II formalized the way Lectio Divina is practiced today by adding the 4 movements, which I'll talk about in a second. But this created a template for the practice, making it more accessible to teach and practice. So traditionally, it's done by reading a passage of scripture, usually a shorter passage of scripture, 4 times slowly with a different focus each time. The 4 steps are read, lectio, meditate, meditatio, prayer, oratorio, and contemplate, contemplatio. The traditional practice reads the text before each step. And this is the most immersive in the text. And once you learn the steps, you can adjust the practice for whatever works with you. I've been in part of groups that read the text twice instead of 4 times. They read it at the beginning of the read and then again before the pray section, sort of combining the read and meditate and then the prayer and contemplation sections. Some people read the text once at the beginning and then move through the 4 movements from that one reading, but definitely reading it before each section is the traditional practice and is the most immersive. So in order to practice this, you would want to find a time when you have time, when you won't be interrupted and you're not in a hurry. And sit down and let yourself relax. It might help to breathe for a minute and let the concerns of the day fade into the background. And then open the scriptures to the text that you choose and read it slowly. And as you read, allow yourself to pay attention to what it's saying. Try to keep your mind from wandering or trying to figure out what this verse should mean or how you should apply it to your life at this stage. Stay present and allow yourself to listen to the text as you read. And then notice any words or phrases that stand out to you as you read. And when you're done reading the text, pause for a moment and then read the text again slowly. And as you read, consider the word or phrase that stood out to you in the first reading. Now, if there wasn't anything that stood out to you or that seemed significant the first time, take time in this reading to pay attention to any word or phrase that stands out and listen to what God might be bringing your attention to. And when you're done with this second reading, reflect on what this word or phrase might mean in light of the rest of your life, your concerns, your joys. Spend a moment savoring this phrase and thinking about what God might want to bring up around this phrase that's in your life. Then after you've paused for a moment reflecting on these things, read the text again, prayerfully considering this phrase. What do you want to say to God about it? What do you want to ask God about it? Why is this important to you? And when you're finished reading this third time, take this phrase to God in prayer, taking in your reflections around it, and bring all of that to God in prayer. Interact with God around this verse and this phrase and your reflections in a prayerful way, a way in which you would normally pray. And if no phrase stood out to you, you can also pray about that. Does that bother you? Do you have a lot on your mind? And does this practice feel difficult right now? You can pray about whatever is relevant to your experience of this practice. Now read the text one more time. And when you're done, spend some time in silent contemplation. Try to silence your thoughts, reflections, and prayers. And this is a time to listen. You want to listen to what God might want to say to you. Now, if contemplation is new to you, this last step might feel the most difficult. We're often trained in how to read the scripture and how to form opinions on what the text means, but listening to God through the text might not have been a part of your early formation as a Christian. You may wonder what to think during this step, or if your thoughts wander, you do have the word or phrase that you can bring your thoughts back to. But you may wonder, how do you know what God is saying to you? I can't tell you that. I will suggest, though, that by making this practice a regular part of your day or week, I believe your sensitivity to God's voice will begin to be shaped, and this practice will become easier to enter into. Now, in the coming weeks, I'm going to create some videos where I facilitate the Lectio Divina so that you can just enter into the practice without having to break away to read or to look at the instructions. You can just participate. Now, when I create these videos, you will find a playlist of them linked at the end of this video. Thanks for watching.